Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. I'm joined by the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, as well as the Agri-News Director for 620 CKRM Regina, Ryan Young. I'm Doug Falconer, Agriculture Director at GX94 in Yorkton. And gentlemen, looking back at the week that was, we did hear some news out of the United States that biofuel regulations may actually be in favor of Canada as well as the United States and Mexico. That was something that you thought was pretty good news, Kevin?
So far, the people that understand this policies and follow it closely are optimistic. The policy would seem to indicate that canola from Canada and products from Mexico and US will all be treated the same as far as renewable fuel policy, and that this may exclude products such as palm oil from overseas and used cooking oil from China. But there's a lot of devil in the details about what's called RIN credits and other things that isn't firmly established at this point. But the initial indications of what's called Section 45Z appear to be positive for the future of the use of canola oil into the American renewable fuel industry.
Well, that's good to hear. Of course, so we've still been having a lot of reaction to the news about strychnine not being permitted emergency use in Saskatchewan and Alberta. And Ryan, you had a chance to speak with the president of SARM about that.
That's right. And obviously, Bill Huber is disappointed by the decision. So is the Alberta and Saskatchewan agriculture ministers, R.J. Sigurdsson and David Merritt, respectively. They're disappointed by the decision. All three of them feel that, its emergency use is warranted, just given the concerns that have been heard out there regarding the growing population of Richardson Ground Squirrels and their claims that alternative products that are available don't work as well as strychnine would. I remember Bill Huber saying, it was a guaranteed win whenever you use strychnine. So, as far as Bill is concerned, he said that they're not going to give up on their advocacy efforts to try and reinstate strychnine, although I kind of feel it's kind of a losing battle at this point. The PMRA can say no so many times before, they might just flat out refuse to even hear it anymore, saying, nope, this is our decision, it's final, and just deal with it. So we'll see where the advocacy efforts go from here, but I just feel like it might be the end of the road.
And Ryan, then you had a farmer contact you, I believe, talking about an alternative to strychnine.
Yes, Leonard Piggott from the Dysart area north of Regina here. He actually submitted what I would consider an opinion piece to sastoday.ca, and it was forwarded to me right after that decision was made, and I had a look through it, and it's kind of more in the context of grazing for livestock and cattle. But his idea, rather than using strychnine to control Richardson ground squirrels, you simply let nature do its thing. So what he was suggesting was, rather than cutting grass down to the absolute lowest point that you can cut it, you leave about 8 to 10 inches of grass. That way, the Richardson ground squirrels, which are very small creatures, they can't see past that point, and they can't see the predators. So it allows the predators to snatch them for an easy meal, or it forces them out into another area. So that was kind of his main thing when it comes to controlling gophers. Just let nature do its thing, rather than trying to, use chemicals and poison, something that he's obviously not in favor of because he strongly believes in a holistic approach to agriculture. So I thought it was kind of interesting, his comments, obviously a contrarian opinion and something that we haven't heard from before or quite often.
Kevin, I know in the past you believe that strychnine is gone the way of the dodo bird, and you're probably not going to be going back on that. What do you think of this gentleman's idea? And of course, there are other alternatives out there for Richardson ground squirrel removal.
Yeah, I hadn't heard the theory of leaving grass longer, but there are other measures where you can help nature take its course. One of them is hawk stands. so that you can get the hawks better vantage points for feasting on gophers. And I really believe that the use of the poisons or the rodenticides that are still registered, especially the oat brand bait, one that is proven to be pretty effective, is timing, is getting it into the gopher holes very, very early in the spring when they first appear and there's no other growth for them to be feeding on. And I think the failure of products typically is because you've let it go too far into the spring before you do your action. But I don't have to worry about anybody voting for me like the politicians and farm group leaders do. So in my opinion, strychnine is a nasty product, and because you're actually harming many of the predators for gophers with secondary poisonings, that can be counterproductive too. So I'm not sad to see strychnine remain as a banned product.
Also had news this week that Monette Farms is selling some tracts of land in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Montana. That was something you followed up on, Kevin.
Initially, Monette Farms was discreetly seeking bids from players that it thought could buy large parcels, but this wasn't public. In fact, I was told that if you were approached to put in a bid, you had to sign a non-disclosure agreement and not talk about it. Of course, news still leaked out. But now they actually put on X or on tweeted on there that they're taking bids at monetteland.ca. And if you register as a bidder on there, you can see the 10 locations in Saskatchewan and 2 in Manitoba and 3 in Montana. You add up the land available for sale in the Saskatchewan locations, and my tally came to something like 129,000 acres. And I think it was 54,000 acres in Manitoba, or maybe 49 in Manitoba, 54 in Montana, I believe. So this has got a lot of people wondering. Of course, this land they're taking bids, doesn't mean they'll necessarily sell any or all of it, but it's probably a sign that Monette Farms, a very large farming entity with many, many irons in the fire, is interested in restructuring and getting its balance sheet into a better situation. And it'll be interesting to see whether sales of that magnitude or offers of that magnitude have any impact on the overall land market.
Interesting. And of course, Kevin, you were following up on a conference in Regina this week, and one of the people there was Lana Shaw from the Southeast Research Farm at Redverse, and she was talking about a regenerative ag project that involves PepsiCo. That was quite interesting.
It's not something that's been highly publicized. It's just been sort of word of mouth, but they're into hundreds of thousands of acres. And people hear PepsiCo and they think, well, it's just a soft drink company. But PepsiCo is a very large food company, owners of Frito-Lay, for instance. And for certain, what they consider regenerative ag practices, they're willing to pay a support payment of about $15 an acre on canola. If you're doing some a little extraordinary things, the premium's a little bit higher than that. So people often hear that food companies are interested in regenerative agriculture, but here's an example where a food company is actually putting some money into promoting practices it thinks are valuable. So for more information, you can go to the Southeast Research Farm website, which is serfsk.ca, and it better explains the regenerative ag program that you can talk to them about.
All right. And then, of course, today, I guess it was, you had a story regarding a nitrogen stabilizer, and that I think was pretty timely as producers start thinking about seeding here in the next month or two.
Yeah, there's been lots of stabilizers, available over the years. The difficulty is that many of them kind of gum up an air seeder, and also there's a perception that if you're banding urea fertilizer, you're not going to lose it to the atmosphere. And if you're only shallow banding, you can still have substantial losses. And with bigger air drills and the horsepower requirements, producers have started banding only an inch or two deep, and probably in many instances, especially if they have high pH soils, losing quite a bit of it to the atmosphere. So there are stabilizers now out there that are being done in such a way that they won't gum up seeding equipment. And if you start doing the economics on it, putting a stabilizer in place so that you're not losing 15 or 20 or 25% of your nitrogen to volatilization can be a paying proposition.
And of course, Ryan and I each had a story today on our farm shows just regarding the latest when it comes to canola diseases in Saskatchewan. And were no confirmed cases of clubroot in Saskatchewan during surveys last year, but there are some issues with verticillium stripe. Ryan, I'm sure you found that story quite interesting when they went through sclerotinia stem rot and blackleg and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe it was clubroot specifically that they said that it's to the point where it's treated as a regular disease. It's not necessarily a threat anymore. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It stood out to me the most. But in terms of verticillium stripe, not really a surprise. Continues to have its presence known in Western Canada. So something to look out for in the future. And sclerotinia, also not a surprise as well. Definitely in areas like the Southeast, for example, where they got a lot of moisture last year. So those diseases cropped up as well. But definitely when it comes to clubroot, treating it as a regular disease, that really stood out to me.
Kevin, your reaction to the news that clubroot and blackleg aren't too much of an issue, but verticillium stripe is?
Well, both blackleg is something we thought we had solved years ago with genetics, but it continues to be a problem. We haven't conquered that. But the attitude over clubroot certainly has changed dramatically over the years. For a while, when it was really a big problem, especially north of Edmonton, it was almost something you didn't want to talk about. If you had clubroot, the value of your land was going to go way down. People were stopping growing canola for years, trying to get rid of blackleg. But the disease resistance has been put into canola, and it's quite common to have that in the varieties of canola now. And now it's treated, it's sort of like it's no longer a plague, it's more like a common cold. It's something that can be dealt with and is not causing the losses that it once did, not spreading like it once did. So it's good to see that is one of the things that's taken off the list of terrible hazards for canola.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young and the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer saying so long until next time.